Hey, welcome everybody to Tuesday Live. And if you've seen the post, well, if you're watching this, you saw the post, so you already know who my guest is. And I'm going to introduce him in just a second to you. Your world's about ready to be rocked. It's going to be engaging. I have no doubt about it. You're going to wish you liked and shared this video if you don't. But it's definitely something. Listen, I would appreciate it if you would like and share it, because it just helps us out with the algorithms to get the word out. And then also, as a reminder, you can download the app, the Hope for Our Times app. It's free to download the app. And we have a lot to talk about, so I'm just going to have my guests come on over. So, John Haller, welcome to Hope for Our Times livecast.
Good to be here, finally.
It is. You know, we tried a few weeks. I think it's before I went to Cancun. I tried, and you were golfing or something like that.
Was that another ministry trip?
It was another ministry trip. No, actually, that was a vacation.
I know you did some ministry down there.
I have not had a vacation in so long, and all I did was just travel and work, and then work and work and work, and I needed one. It had been quite some time, probably a couple of years, and I said, so I went down to Mexico and saw some good friends down there too. It was great. We're going to start out talking about Yuval Noah Harari, but I'm going to get this one, the elephant in the room. I'm going to deal with it right out of the gate, John. Because people, you know, you get me. I'm not afraid to talk with people that disagree with me on things. I have a real challenge, for example, with the 200 million Chinese army. I don't believe there is such a thing. I don't believe the Bible teaches that. Revelation chapter 9 is not the same as Revelation chapter 16. I have problems with some of the timing of the covenant of Antichrist of Daniel chapter 9. And so, and I know people don't like everything that I say, and I don't have guests that agree with me 100% of anything. And John, I have already been reading the comments. People say, wow, let the fireworks begin. So I am premillennial, and I believe in a pre-trib rapture. John Haller, he's premillennial, but he believes in a pre-wrath rapture. So we have a disagreement there. And I'm not afraid to have John on here. And John is a wealth of information, and we agree on a whole lot of things. And I know. By the way, Pete Garcia told me to tell you hi, and so did Olivier Melnick. In fact, I spoke with Olivier just a little while ago. They both told me to tell you hi.
Well, good.
So we're gonna have a great time. John, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you still getting set up? I know you have.
No, I'm here. I'm kind of looking around, but I'm ready.
Okay, you got all your. Okay. So we're going to start off with this, folks. You ready for this one? Yuval Noah Harari. That guy is a wicked, evil blasphemer. John, I've read a lot about him. I've watched many videos with him. You know more than I do. What are your thoughts on that guy? And maybe you can update people who are hearing about him for the first time a little bit about who he is, so people know.
Yeah, so Dr. Harari, Yuval Harari, is a Jewish, by ethnicity, non-religious, claims to be atheist Jew. He is a professor of medieval history at, I think, Tel Aviv University or Hebrew University in Tel Aviv. He's very popular. He has been making the rounds for a while. I first became aware of him back about 2017 or 18 when he spoke at the Davos World Economic Forum. And during that conference, they were talking about, his talk was, will the future be human? And people that I know that were there say that it was the most attended talk of any of the talks that were given at Davos that year. And he's been a very popular speaker. But as I've kind of dug back into his past, well, first, let me tell you what he said at that meeting. He talked about the fact that with artificial intelligence and everything, we are now at the point where we can hack humanity. And because we can hack humanity, we need to determine what's it going to mean in the future to be, because the definition of what is human is going to be. And he made a very chilling comparison. Now, being a professor of medieval history, the Dark Ages, about the feudal system, the feudal system that was in place back in the Middle Ages. And he said, back in the Middle Ages, the serfs were the lowest people. They were just barely above animals. but at least they provided a service to the Lord of the manor. But now we are at the point where we are going to be having people who have nothing to give to society, because the lower level jobs are going to be taken over by robots and artificial intelligence and that sort of thing. So put that in the context of, what the World Economic Forum said a couple of years later, which they now deny, but you can still find it at archive.org. You'll own nothing and be happy. Everything will be a service. And so as I dug back into Harari, though, I found out that back in 2015, he had spoke at Google headquarters in Silicon Valley. And I've played this on some of my updates a couple of times. I did a midweek one a couple months ago. And what he said there, he says, I love coming to Silicon Valley. I love being here at Google. I love coming to Silicon Valley because it is here that the religions that will control humanity in the 21st century are being created. That's exactly what he said. And he'll come out and say that, the resurrection and Christianity, that's all fake news and everything. But he's one of these elites who think that not only they're going to change the way we live, they're going to change what we believe. This is what's so chilling about this.
I have this one quote from him. It says, in the Bible, God is the creator. His chief power is to create. It creates animals and plants and humans according to his wishes. I saw this on video too. It's not just made up. Now we are gaining this power to create life just like God. And in a way, we even go beyond the biblical God. The things he says about the God of the Bible, I mean, he's the most blasphemous speaker that I've ever heard.
It would be hard pressed to find someone that's not. So he's written a couple of books, Homo Deus, and I can't remember which. I mean, his books have sold over 35 million copies. The books. He has another one that he's come out with that's also running up the bestsellers. But to put that in perspective, we in the premillennial community, we're all familiar with Behind series, and that entire series, which was at least a dozen books, sold 60 million copies. So 2 books, this guy has sold 35 million copies. So he's really one of the leading thinkers. He's homosexual, but then he comes out with this article that I sent you that I found from back in 2021. And he says, that the worst thing for humanity is farming. Or animal farming is one of the worst crimes in history. Of course, he's a vegan. And then, you couple that with this article, we have the food crisis. We have this massive food crisis going on in the world right now. And it's terrible what's happening. I mean, and so Harari is against animal farming, but this is part of the World Economic Forum agenda. People need to realize this. In the Netherlands, the World Economic Forum prime minister there just put in a rule that farmers have to reduce their nitrogen input, output, whatever, by 30%. And even people that are, raise dairy farms and farms for meat and that type of thing, they say we're going to have to cut back anywhere from 50 to 90%. So that's a great. So maybe the World Economic Forum needs to kind of update its little meme that it put out. You'll own nothing and be happy. You'll own nothing. You'll be vegan and you'll be happy.
Yeah. And John, this is, I get asked this question. You probably have too. How is the World Economic Forum? I wouldn't just say that. It's these globalists. It's the UN, World Health Organization. They all fall into the same. It's all the same thinking. It's all world. It's all global if you think about their organizations. With that, this is how they are going to achieve that. You'll own nothing and be happy. And that's the question. How is that ever going to be possible? Well, they're going to find ways to confiscate everything from you. So we see it with the farmers in the Netherlands. Now that's come to Canada, from what I understand, and it's coming everywhere. You just start doing these restrictions, making these changes, say like they do in China. Well, you still own it, but you don't really own it. Your name is on it, but the government actually controls everything. to the
That's
point
right.
where if you're going to
That's
eat,
right.
they want you to be, if you're going to be able to eat, you're going to have to go to Big Brother and say, well, thank you for giving me the food that is allotted to me. They want to be
Yeah.
God, is what they are really doing. Yuval Noah Harari is a wicked man. I've seen these statements that he makes, and he is willing to eliminate whoever it is in the population in order to achieve that elite status. He gets into the whole transhumanism stuff, and those people who are not going to be augmented by machines are these people who are useless, and therefore they're the ones who can be eliminated. So when I look at places like Sri Lanka, Ecuador, we watch what's happening there, these globalists are perfectly good with them being eliminated. And you can start the collapse of the civilization with these small countries like that.
Look, Tom, it's probably even worse. It's even closer to home. It's very difficult to, and you know this because you do updates all the time. I watch them, and it's very difficult to gather and collect the information and then put it into a discernible format, or something that makes sense, because everything is connected. So we had the Netherlands protest. Sri Lanka's collapsed because they did away with fertilizers down there. They just said everything had to be organic as of this date. And immediately farm yield, they went from a rice exporting country to a rice importing country. Prices have gone through the roof. They don't have food. They're starving. There's riots in the streets. Then they do this in the Netherlands, which is one of the top, certainly I think in the top 5 food exporting countries in the world. They have hundreds of years of experience as farmers and family farms, and they're fantastic at it. But they put in this thing, and now the farmers are saying they're trying to drive at least half of us out of business overnight. And the guys that are putting these rules in place, they just say, well, that's just the way it is. You're going to have to learn how to deal with it. Now we know that in Canada right now, if you will go to Canada and you will type in nitrogen and Trudeau and nitrogen in a search bar, you will find news reports in Canada where Canada is instituting the exact same rules in Canada that they are enacting in the Netherlands. The difference, though, is that in Canada, they figured out how to weaponize their internet and systems of control, so that they, remember with the truckers, they shut the truckers down, and anybody who gave anything to the truckers that was Canadian and had a Canadian bank account, their account was shut down. Now they're putting in these rules on the farmers. There's going to be farmers protests, and they're going to do the exact same thing. And so you can always be a little skeptical, like, well, are they really trying to collapse everything? And then it's sort of when you add up the mountain of evidence that's now built up about this, they are trying to collapse everything. So they're trying to get rid of meat, dairy, that type of thing. Apparently, I don't know if baby formula is part of the plan or not, because, we have a baby formula shortage in our country that's still not resolved. And the interesting thing is you can go to the mainstream media all day long, and you won't find articles on baby formula shortage at the New York Times. But in their Sunday Style section this past Sunday, you will find an article about how cannibalism is becoming more accepted in our culture.
Yeah, so that's just bizarre, this whole cannibalism thing. Now, also, with interesting thing about baby formula, Bill Gates just happens to be this owner and producer of this attempt to come up with a new baby formula.
Synthetic baby formula or something, yeah.
Yeah, and so you look at this, and so with the food crisis, so I'm absolutely convinced, everything you're just saying tells me this is a manufactured food crisis that's coming. And
that's right.
And why, I mean, if they really cared about people, they would make sure the farmers had enough nitrogen. They would make sure, this whole Russia-Ukraine thing, I personally think that is even intentional. I think these globalists, these Western globalists, want a war with Russia. But, I mean, I look at all of this, very bad, and then you bring up cannibalism. I want to get to the next thing. So, I mean, I don't want to talk about cannibalism because it kind of makes me sick. But, I mean, do you remember that movie Soylent Green?
Yeah, I do. That actually was set in 2022.
Yeah. There we go.
So maybe it was 2023. It was set right around our time.
The movie was? It was? I
The
didn't
movie
remember
took
that.
place. Yeah, it came out in, I think, 1973. Charlton Heston and Lee Taylor Young, I think her name was, and yeah, it was set in 2022 or 2023.
Is that, well, what a quinky dink. This kind of like
Edward
The
G.
Simpsons.
Robinson,
You
yeah.
see these Simpsons episodes that were made like 15 years ago, and they have some weird prediction, and next thing you know, here we are living what Bart Simpson said was going to happen.
Well, sometimes you wonder if these people that are doing these shows where they kind of come up with this stuff, are they working for the elites or are they reading Bible prophecy?
Yeah, no kidding. Hey,
Because it does seem to fit a lot of times.
well, let me ask you this, and I'm going to ask you, about the tribulation, and I'm sure people are going to have questions about the rapture. So this is going to be a very interesting time over the next few minutes. Okay, Israel, in the light of the Russia, Iran, Turkey summit last week, you connected me with the General Amir Avivi over in Jerusalem, and I was able to do an interview with him there at the TBM studio. Thank you for that connection. So your thoughts on this whole thing?
I'm going to give you a shorthand answer,
Okay.
and I'll give you a little bit of a long answer. The shorthand answer is I just finished, I started some yard work before I came down here. That's why I was sweating profusely when I started, but I was listening to Caroline Glick's podcast. She did an interview this week with David Wormser, who works with Frank Gaffney's group, the Center for Security Policy and Foundation for Defense of Democracies and that type of thing. And David is Jewish. He's one of the better thinkers out there. He's worked in some of the past administrations. I think he worked in the Bush 43 administration. I know that for sure. And they were talking about what does this mean? And it was everything I saw today, I'm going to be honest with you, was very dark. It was very dark. And Caroline is pretty level-headed. I met her once, and she was even talking about the velocity of how how everything is happening. And this is what you talk about. I talk about the acceleration, the convergence of all these things. And so the bottom line is that they're very concerned about where we are, and that Israel needs to get over relying on the United States for anything, because they're not going to come for help. So on the one hand, Biden will say, we don't want the Iranians to get nukes, and on the other hand, they're not doing anything to stop it, and they're not doing anything. They're not really doing anything to do it. And then even worse, some of the people in the Israeli government don't seem to have a clue about what's going on. Yair Lapid, the caretaker prime minister, has never been viewed as the brightest bulb in the drawer. I don't even think he graduated from high school, and that's the truth. But what's very concerning is Dina Gantz, who is the defense minister right now, and they're doing things like Israel has developed this weapon system called Iron Beam. Now, Iron Beam is a laser. It heats up the incoming rocket or missile till it explodes. There's a problem with it, though. The Wall Street Journal had a great summary of it. It doesn't have very much range. It's much cheaper than Iron Dome. An Iron Dome missile, you've seen the missile batteries and the missiles coming in from Gaza or from Lebanon, and these Iron Dome missiles shoot up and they knock all these missiles down. Well, every one of those explosions costs $50,000. And the ones that miss cost $50,000. It's a very expensive system. The Iron Beam system is laser, and it can be operated for about $3 to $4 in American terms each time it lights up. And it can be put on ships. I think they have them on ships. They can put them on drones and that type of thing. But the problem is it has a limited range of probably up to maybe 2 kilometers right now, which is 1.2 miles. So it's just not going to be. You got to be pretty close,
Yeah.
and so that means you have to have a lot of them, and they're expensive. But the problem is that Israel's kind of approached the United States about, hey, will you help us develop this? And Caroline and David Wormser and some others have been sounding the alarm. Like, what are you guys thinking? This is like our baby. You're giving it over to the Americans to raise, and we may lose control of it. Because usually what happens is there's these big defense agreements, and in the defense agreement, the agreement will be, okay, well, like we'll sell you this, but you can't use it under these circumstances, or you have to get our approval. This is why we haven't sold F-35s to Turkey, because we want to control how Turkey uses them. It's why Turkey's been trying to get Russian S-400s, and they don't really want to agree to the terms that the Russians want to. So all of this is very troubling. From talking to General Avivi and others at the Israeli Defense and Security Forum, that there's a very big concern on the part of Israel about what happens in the next war. There's going to be a war. So I think there's a war that precedes Ezekiel 39. I put Ezekiel 38 and 39 later in that 70th week period. Could be wrong. It could be could be before, but I certainly think that the thing that seems to be more on the front burner right now is a war between Israel and Iran. And when Israel and Iran go, Hezbollah, is making all sorts of threats against the Israeli gas infrastructure that's in the Eastern Mediterranean for the Leviathan, the Karish field, a new field called the Karish field, which means shark, and named after sea creatures. And Hezbollah saying, like, that's our gas. Well, it's not their gas. It's clear under any maritime border that they would put out there in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's not Hezbollah's or Lebanon's gas. Yeah. But as General Avivi has told me, and in a conversation I had with him off the record, or not recorded or published, but, it's like there's a very big concern about what happens when there's a war, because in the Gaza war a year ago, that little incursion that took place around Jerusalem Day, Yom Yerushalayim, there was about 4,500 rockets shot from Gaza into Israel. In the 2006 Second Lebanon War between Israel and Lebanon, that lasted about 37 days, and there were 4,500 rockets fired. When the next war happens, there will be 4,500 rockets or more every day.
There will. John, I was up at Rosh Hashanah on this last trip when I saw General Amir.
I just talked about it Sunday. That's the tunnel there at the border.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing
tunnel
thing to see. In fact, I'm going to take a group there. I think we're going to go there in March to that tunnel. The history on it is fabulous, going back to Alexander the Great. And then from there also, then you have the Brits coming through there and making it bigger. But out there, I was with David Tal, and he's pointing at a buoy. That the marker, it's the boundary marker between Lebanon and Israel, and Hezbollah, of course, wants that boundary marker moved because then it gives them gas rights. And they're like, this was never an issue before, but it is now.
No, but it is now because there is a lot of gas out there. It's not. I mean, Russia has many, many times more gas than Israel does, but Israel does have enough gas if they had the infrastructure. If they had a pipeline, or if they had liquefied natural gas facilities, Israel does have enough gas, I think, that they could produce today, that they could make up the Russian shortfall. And the Russian shortfall is going to get worse. I mean, I think that was a picture of the Economist magazine that was published in Europe about Europe's it's a picture of Little Red Riding Hood going through a very dark, dangerous forest, and there's a big bear with red eyes there, ready to pounce on her. And the Economist, they do these great graphics. I love their graphics, but they're sort of telling you that this is going to be bad. And so today, the news all over the place, Financial Times, I just was seeing the headlines earlier this afternoon. Russia's cutting the flow through Nord Stream from 40% of normal to 20% of normal now. So that whatever had lessened it, they're cutting it in half. And already they're doing things in France. They're telling people don't turn on street lights at night. Hamburg, they were rationing cold showers, hot showers. Europe is entering into a very dark period, and the European Union came out collectively. And I know this is one of the theories of end times Bible prophecy, is that there'll be this revived Roman Empire. Well, right now it's going to be, Roman Empire in the dark. They're going to put it together in the dark, but because they won't have gas, they won't have electricity. And they were talking about we're going to collectively come together, all 27 countries, and cut back on the gas that we're using. Well, think of the ripple effect that has. Less gas, electricity, less power, no power to a plant. The plant has to shut down. People don't have jobs. They can't afford. I mean, there's a cascading thing here that is it's apocalyptic. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So we're watching right now, China's got major problems. They got bank runs going on. I personally believe, John, that China is not a player in the last days. I don't think America is. I don't think China is. That's my personal belief. I don't believe the Bible paints it as being a major player. And I look at Europe, and I'm looking at Europe doing, it's like every decision Europe makes, it's kind of like the Biden administration. But I believe everything Biden administration does is intentional to collapse the United States. And I'm watching what's going on over in Europe. I'm going, well, what do you think Putin's going to do? You know? So, I mean, it's not, you don't have to be a genius to figure these things out. In fact, you don't even, I think if you're smart, well, maybe a little bit smarter than Kamala Harris, but
pretty hard to do that. I mean, come on.
I mean, you don't have to be. By the way, I do have a theory that Newsom's going to be president of the United States before too long. I have a theory.
Who is?
Governor, the governor of California, Newsom. Now that's a scary.
He's done so great. He's done so well with California. Why don't we let him have
I think
control of all
this is what's going to happen. Kamala's going to resign because somebody like Obama's going to tell her she's super, super smart, and he's going to say, I have the best job in the world for you. You're
Supreme Court.
And she'll go, wow, okay. She'll do it. Biden's going to say, I need a new VP. He appoints Newsom. Biden disappears because they've got to get rid of Biden. Hunter and Joe, something's going to happen. And guess who our president is? Anyways, that's the theory.
Can you imagine a history of the Supreme Court someday? Scalia, Alito, Thomas, Harris. That's
no. Oh, well, it's already got bad enough. We already have somebody in there who doesn't know what a woman is. Okay, all right. I want to ask you about you did some memes, your own memes. You did artwork, whatever you want to call it, with the coming tribulation. I want to get there in just a second because I know people are going to have a lot of questions about where we are along the lines of the tribulation. But ESGs, I've talked a little bit about them. I probably need to talk more about them. We look at the global economic collapse and the role of ESGs, environmental, social, and governance rules. All these major corporations, they're falling in line. They're kind of forced to, which really forces everybody else to go the same direction. That's all tied into, I look at it with Agenda 2030. But fill us in. The ESGs, because I think everybody needs
environmental,
to know
social, and governance. It's rules are put in, and a lot of this. There's a number of players that are pushing this. BlackRock, through Larry Fink, is pushing it, and part of this is the reason why we don't have gas, we don't have refineries and stuff, because it's not environmentally conscious. It's why the United States went and said we withdraw our support for a pipeline from Israel to Cyprus to Italy. It's too expensive, and Amos Hochstein, who's actually heading up the American team that's engaged in the negotiations over the Israel-Lebanon maritime border, has said, listen, the future is not fossil fuels. Now, I hate the term fossil fuels, but and we can argue about peak oil and where oil and everything comes from. But suffice it to say is that there's a shortage right now. And part of this is because of the ESG. And the big proponents, Larry Fink of BlackRock, who actually a few years ago, I think in 2017, was speaking at a seminar, and a very short little clip of him that's pretty famous. He says, well, my goal is to invest in companies and control people's behavior, and we'll teach them how to behave. And so you see the control thing. And he's a big World Economic Forum thing. He's a big World Government Summit thing. And there's like 3 or 4 big conferences where everybody gets together. World Economic Forum, the World Government Summit, which is in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai, the St. Petersburg Economic Forum, which is SPIEF it's called, and then the Future Innovation Investment Initiative, or Future, and that's FII Institute, and that's put on by Saudi Arabia. And so in my research, I did an update on this a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, indicated that 2 of the big pushers outside of BlackRock and some of the big accounting firms on ESG was the Saudi Arabian government through their FII Institute in Russia by funding these NGO groups. And so what you see is what Troutman and others, and Caroline Glick and David Wormser were just talking about an hour ago on Caroline's new update, was this, I would call it, Loudon calls it the Red-Green Alliance. And they were sort of like, yeah, what is it with America? We have this leftist, Marxist, communist, Islamic alliance, and are sort of aligned with Qatar, which is a big pusher of the Muslim Brotherhood, and Erdogan in Turkey is a Muslim Brotherhood guy, and Ilhan Omar, she just wants to collapse America. So they're all united in that goal, and it's running through our government. And then you throw in the Red Chinese, Chinese Communist Party, and their relationship to the Bidens and everything. And you have a big mess, and you have a lot of people not working for us. And the point that David and Caroline were making, though, is why is Israel falling for it? Why is Danny Gantz? Why is Yair Lapid? Why was Naftali Bennett? Why are they going along with this? Because when you look at what the U.S. government, State Department people are doing, like Tony Blinken and Amos Hochstein, they're going down there and they're selling out Israel. I don't know how else to say it. You can't be nice about this. And this has huge prophetic implications, because we know that Israel will effectively stand alone. So some people are getting it, and boy, but it's happening so fast. That's the thing I think that's really hard to get our heads around.
It is amazing to watch. In Isaiah chapter 28, Isaiah writes about the time when Jerusalem will have wicked leaders. They'll enter into a covenant with Shul, and God says, I'll annul that covenant. You look at Jerusalem right now, I tell you the problem is the leaders they have are exceptionally weak. They don't have, there's like no backbone there. But you look at the Biden administration, it's pretty clear to me the Biden administration is not only not pro-Israel, but is really anti-Israel. I would go so far as to say it's not about abandoning Israel; it's about turning Israel over to the wolves. They're cursing Israel, and I just don't see this going well for America, just with our treatment of Israel.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's and then you sort of layer on top of that the allies that they have in most of the media to do this. You have the funding of, for example, the Soros funding of these prosecutors, which is just tearing down society. I mean, there were
terrible.
There were 7 people shot in Chicago last weekend.
Yeah, every week, Chicago, every week.
It's like 3 times worse than that school shooting down in Texas every weekend in Chicago. And you hardly ever hear about it.
You don't hear anything about it unless you're watching a program like yours or mine or something like that. You will never hear about it because it doesn't fit into their Marxist agenda. So what do? You take another shooting and try to build it into, we got to take your guns.
Now, I haven't been out to Los Angeles for a few years. As you know, I've spent a lot of time there with my wife's mother and stepfather living out there. And so we've been there many, many times. And, but I see these pictures of what's going on with these homeless encampments down in LA. And I see them in Portland. I see them in Seattle. And it's just like society's being ripped apart at the seams.
Oh, it's terrible. John, you've been where I lived before. You came and visited me a few times. And it's just terrible because these California policies are just destroying where I live. Now, the area I live is one of the most conservative places in the entire state, if not the most conservative.
Right.
The whole county is. It's the only county over 1 million residents that was red in the last election. So,
are you in San Bernardino?
Riverside.
Oh, Riverside.
With the sheriff that doesn't take anything from Newsom and these leftists. That county, great sheriff. Couldn't ask for a better sheriff. But nevertheless, the California policies and the Los Angeles ones are driving homeless people to us, and they're everywhere. And it's amongst all the other things that the California policies have done, but they're terrible. But I don't want to talk about that. Nobody else wants to hear about my problems. So
it is a problem. It's all over the place. I mean, it's in all the major cities. Crime is rampant, and then you have. And I think I was watching Fox at lunch, and I just saw some stats they put up about all the people that are retiring or resigning from the New York Police Department.
Oh,
at a time when they need cops, and there was like 800 cops resigning. Do you understand what that means? They're giving up their pensions and everything. People used to like to get those jobs.
Yeah.
Now people can't wait to get away from them. And I've got some friends out there and in your area live in Riverside County, and some of them, one of them worked for the LAPD, and they had, certain mandates that were put in place, and a lot of people quit.
Yeah.
And you don't need this at the time. It's just, it's a very troubling time that we live in.
These areas, LA, New York, they're going to be, talk about where Jesus says lawlessness will abound. Well, you look at that. And then you look at the military, and the people that are kicked out of the military, they're the ones that, if you wanted a strong military, they're the ones you want to keep. But instead, we've got these woke people, they're teaching woke agenda. It doesn't look good at all when we look at the state of things.
Look, it's everywhere. Look, I got to tell you, I cleaned out my office a couple weeks ago. I'll still do some legal work on my own and that type of thing. But so effectively from the firm I was with for the last 20 years of a 42-year career, I'm gone. But listen, I'll be honest with you. I almost quit 2 months ago. Because 2 months ago, my law firm sponsored a big CLE conference held in the State House Rotunda of the state of Ohio, right? My office looked right down on it. Transgender, LGBTQ and the law and everything. And they had the Chief Justice of the Ohio Supreme Court there, who ostensibly ran as a Republican when she got elected. Now she's resigning, but it's like, and so my firm co-sponsored that seminar. Now, do you think they was like a Christian Legal Society seminar or something like that?
Oh, no.
They would have run from that
way.
So fast they would have set the grass on fire behind them. But this is the state of the world. And it was standing room only in the State House Rotunda at the Ohio State Capitol. All Republican legislature, Senate and House, and a Republican governor.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
And a Republican-controlled Supreme Court, supposedly.
All right, you see everything coming together. I'm going to ask you this because I've got to get to questions here in a minute. But you did that artwork. You sent it to me. It was great, by the way. It was really good. Did you do that yourself?
Yeah, I did that this morning. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I just couldn't quite get it put together. So I was updating my Four Horsemen slide, because this is a controversy that comes up a lot, and I think it comes up even regardless of whether people. I always prefer that we talk about everybody as futurists and premillennials, and I certainly hope I know what I hope the rapture is, and I know that I kind of think it might not be, just because I think a mission for the church in that time. But and if I'm wrong, fine. I don't think it'll make any difference where we're at when all that comes together. But so there's a controversy about the Four Horsemen. Are the Four Horsemen riding yet? Are they just mounting up? Are they only unleashed when we get into that 70th week, that 7-year period? So I think people could make the case, and certainly they're mounting up. I think we can make the case for that. So, but we see a lot of the things associated with them. In fact, we see a lot of things associated with the trumpets and even somewhat the vials that are sort of casting a shadow back into our time. So that the shadow, so I tried to represent it, that the shadow that's cast back, because when you look at what happens at the end, you have this Jesus returning, and this light and power and glorious appearing and all this. And so maybe the things, as that light projects backwards towards our time, there's shadows that are created by the things in between, which would be the horsemen. So, initially when the horseman thing starts, there's going to be if they're not riding, they'll be sort of like a blurry shadow. But as it gets closer, the shadow will get closer and closer to the horse. It'll become crystal clear. And then when the horseman is here, then everything will be here. But I think this is the period. I'm just trying to pick up a graphic on how to put that in place. So I just sort of was playing around with it today. And so I sent you were the first one to see them. And
can I show it?
Sure.
All right. So this is what it looks like. This is such a cool picture.
I think this is the pale. I think I did it with the pale horse. Yeah.
Oh, wait, let me back up where it's clear. Is that clear?
Yeah. So you can see where the shadow is, and that's when it's getting closer to when the horseman will actually be unleashed, when the seal is broken and the horseman rides forward. Yeah. So I'm going to do that for all the horsemen, and I'll probably do it for the trumpets at least too, as we sort of put them in place on this timeline. So I always say, that I'm probably less dogmatic about my timelines as I used to be. I don't use my big charts anymore. And I always tell people, keep your charts in a easily editable format, because things may change. Yeah, it's not things may change. Things will be changing, and they'll be changing very quickly. How many times have you said, Tom, have I said, have friends of ours like Jan and others said, I didn't really see this.
You know what, and I'm saying it more and more. Yeah, I'll tell you what a verse that's really fascinated me more than any time before, just within the last couple of weeks, is in Daniel chapter 2, when you have this dream of Nebuchadnezzar. You get down to the feet in the clay, and in Daniel chapter 2, the clay and the iron don't mix, and it's partly strong and partly weak. And then it says, because they can't mingle with men. It's that attempt to mingle with men. And I'm thinking, I've thought for the longest time, what does that mingle with men? Of course, L.A. Marzulli or somebody will say, well, this is the Nephilim thing. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it is fascinating. Here it says, as you saw iron mixed with ceramic clay, they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. I got to tell you, John, I look at that from this aspect of a guy like Yuval Noah Harari and this whole transhumanism stuff now, where I don't know. I mean, there's so many different, what does that mean? Why did Daniel have to put that in there? Because other than that, I've always taken that as being political. You have a partly strong, partly weak kingdom, but all of a sudden you have this mingling with the seed of men. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there is the Nephilim thing. People have posited that. Other people have said, well, it's Islam and sort of a fake religious system, and that doesn't mix very well. And we'll see how it goes. I cite Daniel chapter 12, verse 8 all the time, where it says, Daniel, what does this mean? Daniel says, and he says, listen, seal up the book until the time of the end. And then we know earlier the thing, it says men will run to and fro, go to and fro. And I think that has kind of a double meaning to it. It can mean a lot of people going all over the place and traveling a lot, and knowledge will increase, but it could also mean people going back and forth through the book, through all the prophetic scriptures and putting them together. And it says the wise will understand. Daniel 11 says the wise will instruct the many. But then in Daniel 12, verse 8, it says, and the wicked will not understand. Yeah. So I think that ties in pretty tightly with your observation about Daniel chapter 2, those verses there.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, that's where I've hung my hat over the last few years. The closer we get to the end, I believe what Daniel wrote is we're going to understand more and more. I believe the primary meaning of running to and fro is not speaking of necessarily travel, although you can apply it to that. I do think it's about
double meaning, right?
Because the context seems to be the understanding of the truth of the prophecies regarding the time of the end. That's the context of running to and fro, and knowledge will increase. It appears to me, yes, we can say knowledge is increasing every day. Look at AI, it is. However, the context is it's all the understanding of what it's going to be like in the last days. So I also think this, John, people who are alive during the tribulation period will be able to figure out the mark of the beast and who the Antichrist is. And when you have, for example, the prophecy in Revelation chapter 13, Here's the mystery. It's the number of a man and his name and a 666. And the way it's told is you can figure it out. I don't know if anybody can figure it out yet. You know, I get calculations every day. If somebody tells me they've calculated and here's this and you know, but I think as we get closer and closer to that time, these things will become clearer and clearer and clearer. And I'm also convinced when I get to heaven, I'm going to go, man, I had that one wrong on a couple of points.
Yeah. Or, you know, Jesus may say, you didn't see that one coming, did you?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of those. And
sometimes I wonder if he's not up there with, I don't want to be sacrilegious when I say that, but with sort of a sense of humor, throwing cosmic knuckleballs at us as we kind of go through these end times, because we always, well, I didn't really think it was going to quite work out that way. And that's why I try to be not quite so dogmatic about some things. I think we can observe things that are going on. It's clear something is going on. I mean, even not, I mean, it was many years ago, one of my partners came in my office and she closed the door and she sat down, and there was a lot of turmoil in the world. This was back in the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And she said, is this the end of the world? And I said, well, you know what I stand for and you know what I talk about every week. Are you sure you want to be asking me that question if you're not ready to, you know, make a change in your life? So you can use it as a witnessing tool and that type of thing. And but people are observing that something's going on. Something's not quite right.
Pretty much everybody knows something's going on. Some people are I believe they're in some type of delusion where they think everything's going to work out wonderful. And everything's going to go back to normal, whatever normal is. It ain't going back there. Hey, John, we're supposed to be done now, but we're not.
We can go on a little longer if you want.
You go 15 more minutes? Okay. I have a couple of questions for you. I want to get to questions. So everybody type the word question in caps, all caps, and then start sending your questions. John, a couple of things. One of them is, how do people get a hold of you? We have your contact in the YouTube description, but if you could mention it, it'd be helpful.
Sure. Fellowship Bible Chapel, you can get our on our website at fbchapel.com, and my email address is on there. There's other contact information. Most of our stuff is put on YouTube. We also put on Rumble, I think on Brighteon, also a thing called Remnant Truth Network, RTNT.org. And there's also an RTN app. People post some of my stuff there. And then I see people posting my stuff on Rumble, and I don't really care. We don't charge for anything that we do at Fellowship Bible Chapel. But then we also just rolled out so if you go to the Google or Apple app stores and Fellowship Bible Chapel, you can get our app. We're loading it with content. We just rolled it out a week ago Friday. So it's only 10 days old, if not even 10 days old. And we did live stream Sunday through the app. People said it was actually better than YouTube. So that's been in development for about a year. So we hope what we'll do is we'll also update podcasts. So soon I think you'll be able to find us on all the different Spotify, Podbean, and all those other Apple podcasts and that type of thing. You'll be able to find us there. I don't know if we'll get on Roku or anything yet, but we're pretty easy to find. But because we do a lot of stuff on YouTube, we try to protect the church's sermons and that type of thing, because YouTube is the easiest platform for people to use. Yeah. But there's certain things that we don't talk about on YouTube, because and I know you get these strikes, you get our tech overlords telling us what to say and what not to say. So there's some things we just don't talk about on YouTube.
Yep, can't, and it's just the reality of it. I have good news for me. Thank you, John, for all of that. We are going to be able to host our own programs here probably by Sunday night will be the first one. It'll still be on YouTube, but if I got to do the JD thing, because I can't say something, I'll say, hey, we're going off, but it will still be on Roku and everywhere else. It'll also be on the app. It'll be on the website. Yeah. But if we just got to, what we just got to deal with YouTube.
And I'll be doing that more too now that have a little bit of time freed up, since I don't have to go down to the downtown anymore.
Hey, so let me get to the questions. But
John Haller 50.
First.
By the way, John Haller 54. I think will get you to me on Twitter, Getter, Telegram, Truth Social. I think I have the same one on all of them.
John Haller 54. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, I have a conference coming up. I'm sure you've heard about it. Huntington Beach. Billy Crone's coming. Brandon's coming. Holt House. I got Monkey Works, who I think you would find most interesting.
Yeah, I've seen him. I've seen him on the channel. I've seen his channel.
Amongst several other guys. We're going to be at Huntington Beach. You can register for the live stream event. It's you can register on the app, Hope for Our Times, or on the website, hopeforourtimes.com. Also, it's here in the YouTube description to register for it. And it's only $14.99 because I wanted to make sure that we get as many people to watch as possible. And here's the great news, John. It's not going to be on YouTube, so that means we get to talk about anything we want. And with Brandon and
yeah, boy,
and Billy, who knows?
Yeah, Brandon. Well, you know, Brandon was at our church a couple months, I guess, back in February. He was doing a conference down around Louisville, Kentucky, so I went down and picked him up. And we should have recorded. I kept telling him we should have recorded the conversation in the car on the way back. I think people would have found that kind of interesting, you know. Brandon and John unplugged.
That would have been good. That would have been great. Hey, so this first question says, "What's your favorite verse in the book of Jude?" That's from someone named Todd.
Well, you know, I think the principal one, and I don't have it memorized by verse, but you know, there's in the past talks about people that they're going to be falling into deception, and they need to be rescued. And some of them, you know, you need to kind of gently pull out. I'm paraphrasing, and others say you need to snatch them like you're pulling them out of the fire. So that's sort of a admonition, I think, as to how we're supposed to act with some people. If they're not getting it, you just need to really hammer them.
Yeah.
And yank them away from this false teaching and stuff.
There you go. Hey, next question.
Don't even get to talk about false teaching that much anymore.
You know what, John, I need
so
to
much
have
other stuff going on.
I need to have you back on probably a little bit more often than once every 2 years. So for 5 years or however long.
Yeah.
So if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on a Monday or Tuesday. Okay, I'll hit you up. And I know Sunday night somebody sent in a question, when are you going to have John Haller on? And so I was able, and it was a live thing I was doing Sunday night, and I said, you know, I'm going to text him right when we're done here.
Well, I know I was supposed to do it a couple weeks. You asked me a couple of weeks ago, and I think Pete Garcia filled it in instead. So.
Pete's always going to hit a grand slam.
But if you got a couple more questions, I'm more than willing to stay over a little bit, but it's up to you.
Okay, this is from Jason. Do you think Jesus has loosened the seals?
I'm sort of the mind that the seals have not been opened yet. And I also have a graphic, I'll probably use it on Sunday, of how I kind of thought about the seals a little bit, because it's sort of like the seals, they give you a little bit more information, So it's not like you are unaware of all the things in the scroll until the whole thing is open, until all the seals are popped. It's like the first seal, you know, it opens and you can unroll part of that of the scroll, then the second seal and that thing. And so it unveils a little. My view on the seals, though, is that I believe that I think they open sequentially. That's why they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But I think that the effect of the seals is spread out so that throughout this whole 70th week period, whenever the seals start opening, you know, that it's almost like a crescendo in an orchestra score, where it builds, it increases in intensity, and they all sort of reach a convergence point, I think, near the return of Christ. So I don't think, for example, the fourth seal, which I disagree with some people on, that, you know, they think that 1/4 of humanity will die in that seal. I don't agree with that. I think Bill, our friend Bill Salas, might agree with me on that one.
Bill does agree with you on that one. Yeah.
It's a scope of authority. So it says 1/4 of the world he has authority over. Yeah. And so there's a couple. Anytime you talk about something in the Bible prophecy, there's always a way to start an argument about things. And so one of my friends says that, well, 1/4, that's 25% of the Earth's surface is land. So that means this person's going to control the whole Earth. I don't know that he kills all of them. There's plenty of people that die within this period of time. And we know that for a fact. And it's interesting, is it not, that we're seeing this happen right now? We're seeing this increase in death.
Yeah, imagine that. And it's all over something we're not allowed to talk about.
It's over, well, I think it's over a number of things. And then layer on top of this a food crisis that I don't know how else to say it. I'm just afraid it's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. Yeah. So Russia and Ukraine, they enter into this agreement last week, in Turkey under Erdogan. And then what happens within 24 hours? Russia is bombing the port where all the grain is going to come through. Yeah. Now, they'll say, well, we were doing that to get rid of the military installations there to make it safe for everybody. But I don't think, I'll be surprised if this grain leaves Ukraine.
I am watching. I find it interesting when you look at the four horsemen of the apocalypse, or whatever you want to call them. I have my own take. I don't have, in fact, I'll get you back on because I would love to go back and forth with you on it. I agree with Bill on some things along these lines, and then we have a couple of disagreements. But I'm convinced. I am pre-rapture, pre-trib rapture. However, right. I have a different timeline for the first
seals, right?
The first 5 seals, and
right.
and some things don't make any sense to me with traditional pre-trib thinking. Although I am a pre-trib rapture person, and that'd be another program for another time because it would take too long to go.
No, I've seen you talk about that, and Bill and I can remember when I was out there a few years ago. I played golf with him, and when we were. I think we played with Eric Barger, and here he and I are over there talking about the seals and everything. And Eric's like, "Are we here to play golf or talk about Bible prophecy?" And I'm like,
"Oh, Eric's there to play golf."
Yeah, I know. He's very serious and focused. So bless his heart. And Bill and I we kind of got off track and ruined the day for everybody.
I can see that happen. Hey, so another question: is spiritual Babylon the Roman Catholic Church? So my guess is. They're referencing Revelation chapter 17.
Yeah, Dave Hunt did a great book many years ago that sort of got a lot of people thinking that Roman Catholic Church was the harlot of Revelation. And Dave I know you know Dave. You knew Dave as well. And Dave was a great apologist, a great speaker, and one of the most kind, genteel persons I've ever met in my life. He didn't have that. He was a little bit different than he was when he was behind the pulpit. But I think it's part of it. This whole thing with this ecumenical thing that's going on many different levels, and that there's a spiritual component behind it, like behind Putin. Whether you agree with him or not, there is a spiritual, mystical component to him and what he believes and why he's doing it. And then I see things like, I talked about it, I never really followed up, that, you had this Fatima prophecy where the world was to be consecrated to the Sacred Heart of Mary. This was from the Fatima prophecy in 1917. But it's so interesting. I could go for an hour about this, but I'll try to truncate it. So the Pope comes out and says, I'm going to consecrate Ukraine and Russia and the world to the Sacred Heart of Mary. This was announced back in March. And I just was watching the Mass where he did it last night. He's sitting there talking to a stinking statue, consecrating this to your Sacred Heart, Mary.
Wow, I missed that one.
I just found it last night. I don't know when it was put up. It was on EWTN's YouTube channel. So I'm going to put part of it up on Sunday because there's this very interesting story back in 2014 before Russia invaded Crimea that Putin, the report was, and this came out of the Investors Business Daily paper at the time. This was like Financial Times, Wall Street Journal. They have an article in there where it says that Putin took a icon, the Lady of Kazan, a Black Madonna icon, the most holy, revered icon in the Russian Orthodox Church, and put it on a plane and flew it around the Crimean Peninsula before he invaded. And it was this icon that led the Russians into battle against Napoleon. Now, the original one, it may or may not have been lost, but somehow this icon ended up at Fatima. And the people at Fatima that guard the secrets there, from that demonic vision that took place in 2017, they took the icon and gave it to Pope John Paul II. And it was one of his two favorite icons of Mary. And he put it in his private chapel and he prayed to it every day. And when Putin went to the Vatican in 2004, 2005, there was the icon sitting on the table between Putin and Pope John Paul II. And it was later returned to Russia. And so
that's just wild.
I'm just telling you that there is this,
oh my gosh,
there is this religious, mystical, demonic thing that's going on. And so do I think that the Roman Catholic Church is what's described in Romans or Revelation 17? I think it's part of it. I think it's part of it. And the other thing we need to do too is, we always talk about this 7-year period that's coming. And we know that at the end of that time, the false prophet and the Antichrist are thrown alive into the lake of fire, alive and destroyed. Well, so whoever's involved in these things today, to try to put it into context of, is this person that person? Like you do the Pope's 86 now, 85, 86. He's in a wheelchair. There's rumors all the time that he's going to resign, which would make the fact that for the first time, I think ever in the history of the Roman Catholic Church, there would be 3 popes alive at the same time, because Benedict is still alive. He's in his 9th. But you have to add on. So would Francis make it 7 years? Would Putin make it 7 years? Would Erdogan make it 7 years? Because I think we have to, I think we would agree Turkey is an incredibly important component in these things that happen in the end times. Like Khomeini. I mean, Khomeini's in his 80s. Yeah. I just don't think that they're all going to make it that 7 years.
I don't either. Not only 7 years, but also I agree with Bill Salas on this one. I think there's a gap
period, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a time period there, and so the Pope, he's not going to make it. Hey, John, I was alerted that we went over my overage, so I'd like to have you back on. Now, I got a lot of questions on here still, so I'd like to have you come back on. I see tons of them. One of them is America Babylon. I have my own thinking. I'd like to get into that conversation with you.
We can do that.
Plus a whole bunch of other ones that keep coming up, and I feel bad that we're missing them. But yeah.
Also, what we can do, Tom, is I'm starting to stream some during the week, and I haven't interviewed anybody yet, but I'm going to start doing that, so I'll put you on that list.
Okay, and it's been great having you back on. I'm pretty confident everybody's going to love having you back on. Thank you for joining me, John. So you can find John all of the various places. We also have them listed in the YouTube description. Don't forget, register for the live stream prophecy conference in Huntington Beach. The speakers are going to be absolutely fabulous, and it's going to be uncensored too. So that is rather nice. And you get for a full 30 days after the conference, and it's only $14.99, which is about the price of a tank of gas in California. So, John, thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you soon. And God bless.
God bless.
Bye, everyone.